Okay, now I'm going to show you turf toe taping. Turf toe can really exist whether it's a hyperextension, which is typically your turf toe, so the injury would be on the bottom side, or it could also be a hyperflexion from hitting something or kicking an object. It could also injure the top side of the knuckle. I'm going to tape this to actually support a hyperextension injury. So what we want to do is support that toe down, preventing it from hyperextending. So we're going to keep the foot up. We're going to still spray. So we're going to spray that foot and the toe, and then we're going to do some anchors. We're going to do an anchor around the foot. Again, making sure that that's not too tight around that foot. And I'll do 2 anchors here, overlapping by half, just spreading it out, giving somewhere to attach onto. And then we want to anchor around the toe. So we want to have an anchor going around the toe. Again, this is the technique where you can rip the tape in half, or you use a 1-inch roll. Sometimes it might be easier to take the tape off the roll and measure it and then rip it. And you'll see I'll do that in some of the strips. Another important note, we want to be beyond that knuckle so we can get some support on the more proximal knuckle. So we want to be on the middle knuckle. However, we've got to be careful with the toenail itself. If we get too much tape on the toenail, depending on the size of the toe, it can cause an irritation point for the athlete or the individual. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, once we have our anchors, we're going to provide, so we want the foot in a little bit, toe in a little bit of flexion right there, and then we're going to provide some hook strips, so 1/4 figure eights, holding on to the toe. So this one, if we just measure and we leave a little bit longer on the bottom and the top in order for us to do our hold back technique. So we're going to use a few of these strips. If we're going to do a hyper extension injury, I want you to support it first into flexion. This is where it could be different if we had a hyper flexion injury and we're trying to stop it from flexing. I would actually put my top strips on first. Okay, so we're going to do hyperextension injury, so I'm going to do my flexion strips support first. And the angle is going to be very dependent on the actual individual's anatomy. So 1 strip from the lateral side, 1 strip from the medial side of that toe on the bottom. And being very careful again on the nail bed and applying that strip down. Sometimes these angles will vary according to the size of the person's toe. And now I'm going to do a top strip, 2 on the top like I just did on the bottom. And these are more stabilizing strips just to help to stabilize that toe. You're trying to get your tape to lay really flat around the toe. So now I'm going to double that up at least. So I'm going to do another 2 strips, or another strip over each of those previous strips, just spreading it out slightly, so taking a slightly different angle, so I get a spreading out of the actual support, widening that base of support. Again, this tape job is a little bit technical, so you got to take your time with it. This is the last one I'm going to put on. And now what I'm going to do is re-anchor everything. So I'll put an anchor around the foot again. Again, not being sure not to be too tight and squishing the metatarsal heads. And now with these overlapping, or these longer strips, I'm going to fold them back, peel them back, and be able to do the tape on tape technique, which will provide better support of the hook strips. Re-anchor, capturing in those folded back strips. I'll anchor that one more time. Making sure I have good coverage. And I'm also going to then anchor at the toe again. Just closing that whole tape job in. Fold this back a little bit and do tape on tape where I have ends to meet. And if you notice, I change my angles as I'm doing my anchor. I'm actually trying to cover up some of these windows as I'm going. And then I see a little window right here. I'm just going to put a strip on that. They didn't get covered with my other strips. And that's essentially the tape job. I then get the athlete down, get them to weight bear on it, make sure it's okay. Final little added touches is inside the toe can be an irritation point between the two toes. So what a trick to do is to add some Vaseline in there. So if you just take some Vaseline or skin lube and you just put a little dab in here, yes, it does mess up their socks a little bit, but it also can decrease the irritation between the toes as it's in the foot.